Margaret Whitmore pressed send at 4:47 a.m. $3 billion changed hands. One marriage ended. And her husband, still tangled in his mistress's sheets across town, had no idea he had just lost everything. His job, his house, his car, his money, his freedom. He thought she was a simple housewife who clipped coupons and watched cooking shows. She was the majority shareholder of his entire company. For 11 years, she had played the fool. Tonight, the fool would show him who really held the crown. Drop your city in the comments. Let me know how far this story travels. Victor Caldwell's phone buzzed at 4:53 a.m. He ignored it. His wife could wait. She always waited. That was what she did. She waited for him to come home. She waited for him to notice her. She waited for him to love her the way he used to. She would keep waiting. He rolled over in the hotel bed and pulled Amber closer. She smelled like expensive perfume and bad decisions. 26 years old. Legs that cost him a fortune in designer heels. A smile that cost him even more in jewelry. Worth every penny. "You're awake," Amber murmured against his chest. "I have to go soon." "Already?" "My flight supposedly lands at 6. If I'm not home by 7:30, Margaret will start asking questions." Amber laughed. "Margaret doesn't ask questions. That's why you married her." Victor smiled. She was right. Margaret never asked where he went. Never asked why he came home late. Never asked about the charges on the credit card or the perfume on his collar. She just smiled and made his breakfast and told him she loved him. Pathetic, really. "When are you leaving her?" Victor sighed. "This again." "We've discussed this, Amber. The quarterly report comes out next month. A divorce right now would spook the investors. I need to look like a stable family man until my bonus clears." "You said that last month." "And I'll say it next month, too." He didn't mean it. He had never meant it. Amber was fun. Amber was exciting. But Amber was expensive, demanding, and exhausting. Margaret was easy. Margaret was predictable. Margaret was the anchor that kept his ship steady while he sailed wherever he wanted. A man needed both. He kissed Amber's forehead. "I'll buy you that Cartier bracelet. The one with the diamonds." Her pout disappeared. Money always worked with her. Another reason she would never be wife material. Victor showered, dressed, and checked his reflection in the bathroom mirror. 53 years old, still handsome, still powerful. Chief Financial Officer of Whitmore Sterling Architecture. Corner office. 7-figure salary. A mansion in Greenwich that made his college roommates sick with envy. He had everything, and a wife who was too stupid to realize he was sleeping with someone else. He grabbed his overnight bag filled with clothes he had never worn and headed for the door. "Victor!" He turned. Amber was sitting up in bed, the sheet barely covering her. "You do love me, right? This isn't just about the sex." Victor smiled his most charming smile. The one that closed deals. The one that made women believe anything. "Of course I love you. You're the only one who really understands me." The lie came so easily. He had been lying to women his whole life. The drive to Connecticut took 43 minutes. Victor spent the time rehearsing. The turbulence over Chicago was brutal. "The client meeting ran late, but I think we closed the deal." "God, I missed you, Margaret." He practiced until the words sounded true, until he almost believed them himself. His phone sat silent on the passenger seat. No texts from Margaret. That was strange. She always sent a text when he was traveling. "Safe flight, honey. Miss you. Can't wait for you to come home." Today, nothing. She probably overslept. Or she was busy making his favorite breakfast. Eggs Benedict with homemade hollandaise sauce. The one thing she actually did well. He called her. Ring, ring, ring. Voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Margaret. I can't come to the phone right now." Her voice was cheerful, light, The voice of a woman who had no idea her husband had spent the night with someone else. "Hey babe, just landed. Traffic's a nightmare, but I should be home in 40 minutes. Can't wait to see you." He hung up. Something felt wrong. Margaret never let his calls go to voicemail. Margaret kept her phone next to her pillow. Margaret answered on the first ring every single time because she was desperate for his attention. He drove faster. The driveway was empty. Victor pulled his Porsche into the circular drive and killed the engine. He sat there for a moment, staring at the house. Everything looked the same. Red brick, colonial columns, the fountain he had insisted on because it made him feel like old money. But Margaret's Range Rover was gone, and the porch light was off. She always left the porch light on when he traveled. Always. Even when he came home at 3 a.m. Even when he came home smelling like another woman. The light was always on. Not today. Victor grabbed his bag and walked to the front door. His key slid into the lock. The door swung open. Silence. Not comfortable silence. Not peaceful silence. Hollow silence. The kind of silence that meant something was very, very wrong. "Margaret." His voice echoed through the foyer, off the marble floors, up the vaulted ceilings, back to him unanswered. "Margaret, I'm home." Nothing. He dropped his bag and walked toward the kitchen. His footsteps were too loud. His breathing was too fast. His heart was beating against his ribs like it was trying to escape. The kitchen was immaculate. Granite counters gleaming, copper pots hanging in perfect rows, everything in its place. Except there was no coffee brewing, no eggs on the stove, no Margaret standing by the window with her reading glasses and her morning paper. And on the marble island, exactly where his breakfast should have been, sat a thick manila envelope. Red legal stamp. His name in elegant cursive. Victor stared at it. Just an envelope. Probably tax documents. Maybe something from the accountant. He picked it up. Heavy. He tore it open. The first page destroyed him. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Margaret Ann Whitmore. Caldwell. Respondent, Victor Thomas. Caldwell. Victor laughed. It was a short, sharp, incredulous sound. The sound of a man who couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You have got to be kidding me." He flipped to the next page. Photos. His hands began to shake. Him and Amber at dinner 3 weeks ago. A cozy Italian place in Soho. Her hand on his thigh, his hand on her waist. Him and Amber entering the Ritz-Carlton last night. Timestamp 11:47 p.m. Him and Amber kissing in Central Park. Her arms around his neck, his hands in her hair. Him and Amber in the back of a taxi. The angle was impossible. Someone had been following them. Someone with a professional camera and a very expensive lens. There were dozens of photos. Every dinner, every hotel, every stolen kiss. All of it documented in devastating detail. How? He kept flipping. Behind the photos was a spreadsheet. Forensic accounting. His eyes scanned the columns, and his stomach dropped through the floor. Unauthorized expenditures. 2022-2024. Item 142. Ritz-Carlton Presidential Suite. October 12th. $4,200. Claimed client entertainment. Actual personal use with A. Hayes. Item 156. Cartier 5th Avenue. November 3rd. $12,500. Claimed partner holiday gifts. Actual diamond bracelet delivered to Amber Hayes residence, 847 Park Avenue. Apt 12B. Item 189. First class tickets to Cabo San Lucas. January 18th. $8, $400. Claimed site inspection. Actual personal vacation. Item 203, monthly rent payment. February-December. $4,500 month. Claimed talent retention housing stipend. Actual Amber Hayes apartment. The list went on for 4 pages. At the bottom, circled in thick red marker. Total misappropriated, $487,000. And beneath that, 18 U.S. Code, FIRE 1343, wire fraud. 18 U.S. Code, FIRE 666, embezzlement. Victor's legs gave out. He grabbed the counter to keep from falling. The papers scattered across the marble, photos of him and Amber, spreadsheets of his crimes, legal citations that could put him in prison for 20 years. This wasn't possible. He had been careful. He had buried every expense under legitimate line items. He approved his own audits. He controlled the finances. He was the CFO. Who could have caught him? Who would have even looked? He ran, up the stairs, down the hall, into their bedroom. The bed was made with military precision. The curtains were drawn. Everything looked normal, except the closet. The walk-in closet door was wide open. Victor approached it slowly. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His side was untouched. His suits hung in neat rows. His shoes lined the rack. His watches gleamed in their display case. He turned to Margaret's side. Empty. Not packed a bag empty. Erased empty. The racks were bare. The shelves were stripped. The shoe rack was gone. Even the hangers had been taken. She hadn't just left. She had removed every trace of herself from their life. Victor stumbled backward. He ran to her jewelry box. Empty. Her grandmother's pearls, her mother's ring, the diamond earrings he bought her to apologize for missing their anniversary. All gone. He ran to his home office, to the safe behind the painting. The painting was gone. The safe was open. Inside, where he kept $50,000 in emergency cash and his passport, there was only a yellow post-it note. Your things are with your lawyer. M. She had taken his passport. Victor sank to the floor. He couldn't run. He couldn't access his money. He couldn't even leave the country. She had thought of everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Whitmore, his business partner, his best friend since college. Check your email. Now. Victor opened his email app. The first message was from HR. Subject immediate termination. Victor Caldwell. He opened it. Dear Mr. Caldwell, effective immediately, your employment with Whitmore Sterling Architecture has been terminated for gross misconduct, financial irregularities, and violation of company ethics policies. Your access to all company systems has been revoked. Security has been notified. Do not attempt to enter the premises. A formal complaint has been filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Sincerely, Board of Directors. Victor read it 3 times. It didn't make sense. He was a founding partner. He had built this company. He had made them all rich. They couldn't just fire him. He called Daniel. Daniel, what the hell is going on? I just got an email saying I'm terminated. This is insane. I'm a partner. They can't. Victor, stop talking. Daniel's voice was ice. Not the voice of his best friend. Not the voice of the man who had been his roommate at Wharton. This was the voice of a stranger. Daniel, did you read the termination letter? Yes, but did you understand it? It's ridiculous. I haven't done anything wrong. Margaret is obviously trying to... Victor. Daniel cut him off. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. What? Did you ever actually read the company bylaws? Victor frowned. What kind of question is that? Did you ever wonder where our startup funding came from? The $3 million from the angel investor in the Caymans. That was 11 years ago. Some tech millionaire looking for a tax write-off. What does that have to? That was Margaret. Victor stopped breathing. What? Your wife. The woman you called boring. The woman you said had no ambition. The woman you cheated on for 2 years. Daniel's voice was flat, cold. She invested $3 million to launch this company. She's been the majority shareholder since day one. That's not possible. Margaret doesn't have money. Her father was a librarian. Her mother was a teacher. She clips coupons for God's sake. Her father was a librarian, yes, but her mother's maiden name was Whitmore. The name hit Victor like a freight train. Whitmore. Old money. Railroad money. The kind of money that built libraries and hospitals and had wings named after them at universities. She never told me. She wanted to be loved for herself. She wanted you to see her, not her family's money. Daniel paused. She told us that when we started the company. She said she believed in your talent. She said she wanted to help you succeed on your own merits. Victor's mind was reeling. 11 years. For 11 years he had been married to one of the wealthiest women in America, and he had treated her like a servant. He had condescended to her. He had cheated on her. He had stolen from the company she owned. This morning, Daniel continued, Margaret's lawyers called an emergency board meeting, 5 a.m. They presented evidence of your affair. They presented the forensic accounting of your embezzlement. And then Margaret exercised her majority voting rights for the first time in 11 years. What did she do? She fired you, Victor, unanimously. Even I had to vote yes. Victor slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold floor. She also initiated a voluntary disclosure to the IRS, the offshore accounts, the shell companies in Panama. She's reporting everything. She's paying what we owe in back taxes and penalties. Why would she do that? Because she's smart, Victor. She's making sure that when the feds come looking for someone to blame, there's only one name on the paperwork. Yours. The phone felt like lead in Victor's hand. Daniel, please. We've been friends for 25 years. You have to help me. You have to talk to her. You have to... I can't help you, Victor. Why not? Silence. Daniel, why not? Because I'm in love with her. Victor's blood turned to ice. What did you say? I've been in love with Margaret for years. I never acted on it because she was your wife. Because she was loyal to you. Because she believed in your marriage even when you didn't deserve it. Daniel's voice hardened. But you threw her away. You humiliated her. And now she's free. You son of a... Goodbye, Victor. Don't call this number again. The line went dead. Victor hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. His wife had fired him. His best friend had betrayed him. And he was sitting on the floor of a house he no longer owned, surrounded by the wreckage of a life he had destroyed with his own hands. But he still had Amber. Amber loved him. Amber needed him. Amber would help him figure this out. He found his burner phone in his jacket pocket. The secret phone he used only for her. He dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. Victor. Why are you calling from this number? I thought you were playing house with the wifey. Amber, listen to me. Something's happened. Margaret found out about us. Silence. She found out. She has photos. She has everything. She filed for divorce. She fired me from the company. Wait. She fired you? I thought you were a partner. It's complicated. But listen, I need somewhere to stay. Just for a few days, until my lawyers sort this out. More silence. Amber. I'm looking at my email. Victor. His stomach dropped. There's a company-wide memo. It says you've been terminated for gross misconduct and financial irregularities. That's just corporate speak. They're covering themselves. I didn't... It also says the company is conducting an internal audit of all expenses you approved. Her voice had changed. The flirtation was gone. The warmth was gone. Victor, did you put my apartment rent on the corporate card? He hesitated. Did you? I categorized it as a housing stipend for talent retention. It's a common... You idiot, she screamed. They're going to come after me. They're going to make me pay it back. That's over $50,000. Amber, calm down. We'll figure this out. I just need you to... You need what, Victor? Her voice was razor sharp. You're broke. You're fired. You're probably going to prison. What exactly do you have to offer me? I have. We have each other. We love each other. You said I was the only man who ever really understood you. Amber laughed. It was the coldest sound Victor had ever heard. I loved the dinners, Victor. I loved the hotels and the jewelry and the way people looked at us when we walked into a room. I loved what you could give me. She paused. But you can't give me anything now. You're worthless. Amber, please. Don't come here. If you show up at my door, I'm calling the police. Her voice was flat. Final. Lose this number. Lose my name. And pray to God they don't ask me to testify against you, because I will sing like a canary to save myself. Click. The line went dead. Victor stared at the phone. 4 hours ago, he had been on top of the world. A powerful executive, a desirable man, a master of the universe. Now he had nothing. No wife, no job, no money, no mistress, no friends. He was alone in a house that no longer belonged to him, holding a phone that connected him to no one. He thought about his wedding day. Margaret in white crying happy tears. Him thinking, this woman will never leave me. She's too grateful. She's too weak. He had been so sure. He had been so wrong. Somewhere across town, Margaret Whitmore was waking up in a hotel suite, surrounded by lawyers and accountants, planning the next phase of her revenge. And Victor Caldwell, the man who thought he was untouchable, was about to learn that his nightmare had only just begun. Victor sat on the floor of his home office for 17 minutes. He counted. There was nothing else to do. His phone was shattered against the wall. His wife had vanished. His best friend had betrayed him. His mistress had abandoned him. And somewhere in this city, people were probably already talking, whispering, laughing. Did you hear about Victor Caldwell? His wife cleaned him out. Turns out she owned the whole company. He couldn't let that happen. He couldn't become a joke. He couldn't become a cautionary tale that men told each other at country clubs. Victor Caldwell was a fighter. Victor Caldwell was a survivor. Victor Caldwell always found a way out. He pushed himself off the floor. His legs were shaky, but his mind was starting to clear. The initial shock was fading, replaced by something harder, colder, anger. Margaret thought she could destroy him. Margaret thought she could take everything he had built and throw him away like garbage. She had no idea who she was dealing with. He walked to the bedroom and splashed water on his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was a mess. His $1,000 suit was wrinkled. But he was still Victor Caldwell. He was still the man who had clawed his way up from nothing. He was still the man who had outsmarted every competitor, outmaneuvered every rival, outlasted every obstacle. Margaret was smart. He would give her that. But she had made one critical mistake. She had left him alive. Victor grabbed his backup phone from the nightstand drawer. Every careful man had a backup. He powered it on and started making calls. His personal attorney, Richard Crane, answered on the third ring. Victor, I was wondering when you'd call. Richard, I need you to listen to me very carefully. My wife has lost her mind. She's filed for divorce. She's making wild accusations about embezzlement. She somehow got me fired from my own company. I need you to... Victor, stop. That was the second time today someone had told him to stop. Victor didn't like it. What? I received a call from Reynolds Stone this morning. They're representing Margaret. I know who they are. They're sharks. But you're a shark too, Richard. That's why I pay you $400 an hour. Silence on the other end. Richard. Victor, I can't represent you. What do you mean you can't represent me? You've been my lawyer for 8 years. Reynolds Stone sent over the documentation this morning. The photos, the forensic accounting, the evidence of your extracurricular activities. Richard paused. They also sent a conflict of interest notice. What conflict of interest? Margaret has been a client of our firm for the past 3 years. Separately from you. She retained us for estate planning and trust management. Another pause. I didn't know Victor. She used her maiden name. Whitmore. I had no idea she was your wife until this morning. Victor felt the floor shifting beneath him again. She planned this. It appears so. For 3 years. At least. Victor gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. 3 years. While he was sneaking around with Amber, while he was congratulating himself on his cleverness, Margaret had been quietly building her case. Hiring lawyers. Gathering evidence. Positioning herself for the kill. He had underestimated her. He had catastrophically, devastatingly underestimated her. Richard, you have to help me. Conflict of interest be damned. I can't, Victor. I'm sorry. But I can give you a referral. Thomas Blackwood. He's good. He's expensive. And he doesn't have any prior relationship with your wife. Fine. Give me his number. Richard rattled off the digits. Victor memorized them. One more thing, Victor. What? The FBI called our office this morning. They're opening a formal investigation into the financial irregularities at Whitmore Sterling. They asked about you specifically. Richard's voice dropped. If I were you, I would get a criminal defense attorney as well. A good one. Because this isn't just a divorce anymore. The line went dead. Victor stood in the middle of his bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of a life that was rapidly disintegrating. The closet with Margaret's empty side. The bed they had shared for 11 years. The photographs on the dresser that suddenly looked like artifacts from another lifetime. Criminal investigation. FBI. Prison? No. He wouldn't let it happen. He refused to let it happen. He dialed Thomas Blackwood's number. A secretary answered. Blackwood Law. How may I direct your call? I need to speak with Thomas Blackwood. It's urgent. My name is Victor Caldwell. A pause. Then, one moment please. Soft hold music. Victor paced the room. Every second felt like an hour. Mr. Caldwell? A deep voice. Authoritative. I've been expecting your call. You have. Word travels fast in legal circles. I heard about your situation this morning. Reynolds Stone has quite the reputation. Then you know I need help. I do. The question is whether I can provide it. What do you mean Richard said you were the best? I am the best. But even the best lawyer needs something to work with, Mr. Caldwell. From what I've heard, your wife has built an airtight case. Photos, financial records, witness statements from your own colleagues. There has to be something. Some angle. Some loophole. Thomas Blackwood was quiet for a moment. Tell me about the prenuptial agreement. Victor's heart sank. What about it? Did you sign one? Yes. I insisted on it. I wanted to protect my assets. Did you read it? Victor hesitated. He remembered that day 11 years ago. He had been so confident, so sure of himself. Margaret had seemed so grateful just to be marrying him. Her father, the quiet librarian, had handed him the document with a strange look in his eyes. Son, I'd recommend you read every word of this. Victor had laughed. He had skimmed the first page, seen the standard language about separate property and asset protection, and signed on the dotted line. He was the rising star. She was lucky to have him. Why would he need to read the fine print, Mr. Caldwell? Did you read the prenuptial agreement? I reviewed it. Reviewed it. Blackwood's voice was flat. So you didn't read the infidelity clause? Victor's blood ran cold. The what? Clause 14, Section B, inserted at the request of the bride's father. It states that in the event of proven adultery by the primary earner, all assets acquired during the marriage shall revert immediately to the injured party. Victor couldn't breathe. There's more. Clause 15 addresses the corporate holdings. Any shares held in joint spousal trusts become the sole property of the non-offending spouse upon proof of marital misconduct. That can't be legal. It's unusual, but it's legal. Prenuptial agreements with morality clauses are enforceable in Connecticut, as long as the terms were clearly stated and both parties signed voluntarily. I didn't know what I was signing. That's not a defense, Mr. Caldwell. You had the opportunity to read the document. You had the opportunity to consult with an attorney. You chose not to. Victor sank onto the bed. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. So I've lost everything. The house, the money, the shares. Not necessarily everything. You may be entitled to a portion of your retirement accounts depending on how they're structured, and any assets you owned prior to the marriage should remain yours. Prior to the marriage, Victor thought about what he had owned 11 years ago. A used Honda Civic, a studio apartment in Jersey City, $30,000 in student loan debt. Everything he had now, everything he had become, had happened during his marriage to Margaret. With Margaret's money. Mr. Blackwood, what are my options? Honestly, very few. You could contest the divorce, but that would be expensive and likely futile, given the evidence against you. You could try to negotiate a settlement, but Reynolds Stone doesn't negotiate. They destroy. There has to be something. There is one thing. Victor leaned forward. What? Information, leverage, something your wife doesn't want to become public. Blackwood paused. Is there anything like that, Mr. Caldwell? Any secrets she might be hiding? Any skeletons in her closet? Victor thought. Margaret. Quiet Margaret. Boring Margaret. The woman who read books and tended her garden and never raised her voice. What secrets could she possibly have? And then it hit him. The company. Margaret might own the majority shares, but she hadn't built the business. Victor had. Daniel had. They had made the deals, signed the contracts, approved the projects. And not every deal had been clean. The offshore accounts, Victor said slowly. The shell companies. Margaret might own the company, but she doesn't know the details of how we operated. There are things, irregularities, that go beyond my personal expenses. What kind of irregularities? Tax avoidance, aggressive accounting, payments to foreign officials to secure contracts overseas. Victor's mind was racing now. If I went public with that information, it would destroy the company. It would destroy her reputation. Mr. Caldwell, I have to stop you right there. What you're describing is potentially criminal. I know it's criminal. That's the point. Margaret is trying to send me to prison for embezzlement fine. But if I go down, I'm taking the whole ship with me. Let's see how she likes being investigated by the FBI. Blackwood was silent for a long moment. That's a very dangerous strategy. I'm a very desperate man. If you expose these irregularities, you'll be implicating yourself as well. You were the CFO. You designed these systems. I'll claim whistleblower status. I'll say I discovered the fraud and tried to report it, but I was silenced. I'll say Margaret and Daniel forced me out to cover their tracks. That's creative. Will it work? It might buy you leverage in the divorce negotiations. It might even create enough reasonable doubt to complicate the criminal case. Blackwood paused. But it's risky. If it backfires, you won't just lose your money. You'll lose your freedom. Victor thought about the alternative, sitting quietly while Margaret dismantled his life piece by piece, watching helplessly as everything he had built was taken away, becoming a cautionary tale, a joke, a nobody. No. If he was going down, he was going down swinging. Do it, Victor said. File whatever papers you need to file. I want to fight this. It will require a substantial retainer, $50,000 to start. Victor laughed bitterly. My cards are frozen. My accounts are locked. I don't have $50,000. Then I'm afraid I can't help you, Mr. Caldwell. Wait. Just wait. Victor's mind raced. There had to be something. Some asset Margaret hadn't found. Some cache of money she didn't know about. The Zurich account. He had opened it years ago before he met Margaret. A small emergency fund. $50,000 quietly earning interest in a Swiss bank. He had almost forgotten about it. I have money overseas, in Switzerland, but I need to access it and my passport is gone. Gone? Margaret took it. Blackwood sighed. You can apply for an emergency replacement at the passport office. It takes a few days, but it's possible. And in the meantime, In the meantime, I suggest you find somewhere safe to stay. Somewhere your wife's lawyers won't find you. And Mr. Caldwell, yes, don't do anything stupid. Don't contact Margaret. Don't contact your former colleagues. Don't talk to the press. Everything you say and do from this point forward can and will be used against you. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been making very poor decisions for a very long time. This is your chance to start making better ones. The line went dead. Victor sat on the bed holding the phone. His hands were steadier now. He had a plan. It wasn't a great plan, but it was something. Step 1. Get out of this house before Margaret's lawyers returned with police. Step 2. Find somewhere to hide. Step 3. Get his passport replaced. Step 4. Access the Zurich money. Step 5. Burn it all down. Margaret wanted a war fine. She would get one. He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started packing. Just the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, his backup credit card, the one linked to his old personal account. Margaret might have frozen the joint accounts, but this one was in his name alone. There might be a few $1,000s on it, enough to survive. He was halfway down the stairs when he heard the sound. Tires on gravel. He froze. Through the window beside the front door, he could see 2 black SUVs pulling into the driveway. Behind them, a police cruiser. They were here. Victor's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked left, then right. The back door. He could go out through the kitchen, through the garden, over the fence, into the neighbor's yard. He ran. Through the kitchen. Past the marble island where his life had ended this morning. Through the French doors onto the patio. He was halfway across the lawn when he heard the front door open. Mr. Caldwell, this is the Greenwich Police Department. We have a warrant to search the premises. Victor didn't stop. He reached the fence, threw his duffel bag over, and climbed after it. His expensive Italian loafers slipped on the wooden slats. His suit jacket caught on a nail. He didn't care. He pulled himself over and dropped into the neighbor's yard. He landed hard. His ankle twisted. Pain shot up his leg. He grabbed the duffel bag and limped toward the street. Behind him, he heard shouting. Someone had seen him. Victor ran. He ran down the quiet suburban street, past the manicured lawns and the luxury cars, and the houses that cost more than most people made in a decade. He ran past the neighbors, who had smiled at him at cocktail parties, who had complimented his beautiful wife, who had envied his perfect life. He ran until his lungs burned and his ankle screamed, and he couldn't run anymore. He stopped at a bus shelter 3 blocks from his house. He was sweating, panting, his suit destroyed. He looked like a madman. He looked like a criminal. He looked like exactly what he was. A bus was approaching. He didn't know where it went. He didn't care. He just needed to get away. He climbed on, paid the fare with crumpled bills from his pocket, and collapsed into a seat in the back. The bus pulled away from the curb. Through the window, Victor watched his neighborhood recede into the distance, the tree-lined streets, the elegant homes, the life he had worked so hard to build. Gone. All of it gone. The bus rumbled toward downtown. Victor stared at his reflection in the window. He barely recognized himself. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. I know what you're planning. It won't work. M. Victor stared at the message. His blood turned to ice. She knew. How did she know? He looked around the bus. An elderly woman with a shopping bag. A teenager with headphones. A businessman reading a newspaper. Was one of them watching him? Had Margaret hired people to follow him? He was being paranoid. He had to be paranoid. There was no way she could know about his plan. He had just come up with it 30 minutes ago. Unless Blackwood was working for her too. Victor's mind spiraled. He couldn't trust anyone. His lawyer, his partner, his mistress, his wife. Everyone had betrayed him. Everyone was against him. He was alone, truly, completely alone. The bus stopped in downtown Greenwich. Victor got off. He needed to think. He needed to find somewhere safe. He needed to figure out his next move. But first he needed money. He found an ATM outside a bank branch. He inserted his backup credit card and held his breath. The screen flickered. Checking balance. $3. 247.18. It wasn't much, but it was something. He withdrew the maximum $500. The machine whirred and dispensed the bills. Victor grabbed them and shoved them into his pocket. He felt slightly better. At least he wasn't completely broke. At least he could eat, find a room, survive for a few days. He started walking toward a cheap motel he remembered passing once on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. His phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You withdrew $500 from the ATM on Greenwich Avenue at 11:47 a.m. The motel you're walking toward is called the Pine Ridge Inn. Room 112 is available. They accept cash. Enjoy your stay. Victor stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk. She was tracking him. She knew exactly where he was, exactly what he was doing, exactly where he was going. He looked up at the street. Security cameras on every corner, traffic cameras at every light, credit card transactions logged and time-stamped. He couldn't hide. There was nowhere to hide. His phone buzzed a third time. Don't bother running, Victor. You can't outrun what's coming. The only question is how much dignity you want to have left when it's over. Victor threw the phone into a trash can. He didn't need it anymore. He didn't need Margaret's taunts. He didn't need her mind games. He needed to focus. He needed to fight. He found the motel and paid for 3 nights in cash. The clerk barely looked at him. Room 112. Just like Margaret had predicted. She probably owned the damn motel. He locked the door, pulled the curtains closed, and sat on the sagging bed. Think, think, think. Margaret had resources. Margaret had lawyers. Margaret had the police on her side. But Victor had something she didn't. He had desperation. And a man with nothing to lose was the most dangerous man in the world. He pulled out the backup phone and found the business card he had tucked into his wallet years ago. Sandra Chen, investigative journalist, New York Times. She had interviewed him once for a profile on rising stars in architecture. She had seemed impressed by him. More importantly, she had seemed ambitious. Ambitious journalists loved scandals. Victor dialed her number. Sandra Chen. Sandra, this is Victor Caldwell. We met 3 years ago. You wrote that profile on Whitmore Sterling Architecture. A pause. Victor Caldwell. Yes, I remember. You were the charming CFO. Another pause. I heard you had some trouble this morning. News traveled fast. That's why I'm calling. I have a story for you. A big one. Bigger than just my divorce. I'm listening. Whitmore Sterling has been engaged in systematic tax evasion for the past decade. Offshore accounts, shell companies, bribes to foreign officials. I have documentation. I have names. I have everything. Silence on the other end. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Caldwell. I'm a serious man. Why are you telling me this? Why not go to the authorities? Because the authorities are already investigating me. My wife is trying to frame me for embezzlement. She's using the company's resources to destroy me. But she's not clean either. None of them are clean. So this is revenge. Victor didn't deny it. This is the truth. The truth that my wife and my former partner have been hiding for years. Don't you think the public deserves to know? Sandra was quiet for a long moment. I'd need to verify everything. Documentation. Corroboration. This isn't the kind of story I can run based on one angry ex-husband's word. I understand. Give me 48 hours. I'll get you everything you need. And what do you want in return? Victor thought about it. What did he want? Money. He had lost that. Power gone, too. Reputation destroyed. There was only one thing left. I want Margaret to know what it feels like to lose everything. I want her to stand in the ruins of her perfect life and understand that she didn't win. Nobody wins." Sandra let out a low whistle. "That's some serious hatred, Mr. Caldwell." "She earned it." 48 hours. Send me what you have. If it checks out, we'll talk." The line went dead. Victor lay back on the motel bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. 48 hours. In 48 hours, he would either be vindicated or destroyed. Either way, Margaret would learn that she hadn't married a lamb. She had married a wolf. And wolves, when cornered, always bit back. Victor spent the next 36 hours in that motel room, surviving on vending machine coffee and gas station sandwiches, piecing together the evidence that would destroy Margaret Whitmore. He had a good memory. That was one thing nobody could take from him. He remembered the account numbers for the offshore holdings in the British Virgin Islands. He remembered the routing codes for the shell companies in Panama. He remembered the names of the foreign officials they had paid to secure contracts in Dubai, Singapore, and Sao Paulo. He wrote it all down. Page after page of handwritten notes, dates, amounts, names. A roadmap of corruption that would bring Whitmore Sterling architecture crashing down. If he was going to prison, Margaret was coming with him. On the morning of the second day, he walked to a FedEx store 3 blocks from the motel. He made copies of everything. He scanned the documents and uploaded them to a secure cloud account. He prepared a package for Sandra Chen at the New York Times, complete with a cover letter explaining what she would find. He was standing at the counter paying for overnight shipping when his phone buzzed. A text from Sandra. "Got your preview docs. Impressive, but I need to ask you something first. Meet me at Café Luxembourg. 6 p.m. tonight. Come alone." Victor stared at the message. A public meeting. That was smart. She wanted to see if he was credible before committing to the story. She wanted to look him in the eye and decide if he was telling the truth or just a bitter ex-husband on a revenge mission. He could do that. He could be convincing. He had been convincing his whole life. He texted back, "I'll be there." He spent the rest of the day preparing. He found a thrift store and bought a clean shirt and a jacket that almost fit. He shaved in the motel bathroom with a disposable razor. He practiced what he would say, how he would say it, the tone of righteous indignation he would use to describe the crimes he had helped commit. By 5 o'clock, he was on a train to Manhattan. The city felt different now. The towering buildings that had once made him feel powerful now seemed to loom over him, indifferent to his existence. The crowds that had once parted for him now pushed past without a second glance. He was nobody here. Just another face in the sea of faces. He arrived at Café Luxembourg at 5:55. The restaurant was elegant, understated, the kind of place where media executives and Wall Street types came to make deals over expensive wine. Victor had eaten here a dozen times. He had never felt uncomfortable before. Tonight he felt like an imposter. He spotted Sandra Chen at a corner table. She was smaller than he remembered, with sharp eyes and a notebook open in front of her. She didn't smile when she saw him. "Mr. Caldwell?" "Ms. Chen." He sat down across from her. A waiter appeared. Victor ordered water. He couldn't afford anything else. Sandra studied him for a long moment. "You look terrible." "It's been a difficult week." "I can imagine." She tapped her pen against the notebook. "I've been reviewing the documents you sent, the account numbers, the shell company structures. It's detailed work. I was the CFO. Details were my job. Here's my problem, Mr. Caldwell. Everything you've given me is compelling, but it's also self-incriminating. You're not a whistleblower exposing someone else's crimes. You're a participant confessing to your own involvement and trying to drag others down with you." Victor had expected this. "I'm willing to accept the consequences of my actions. I'm not asking for immunity. I'm asking for the truth to come out." "The whole truth, or just the parts that make your wife look bad?" Victor met her eyes. Margaret Whitmore isn't an innocent victim. She knew exactly what was happening in that company. She approved the budgets. She signed off on the overseas projects. She benefited from every dollar we moved through those offshore accounts. Can you prove that? I can prove she had access to the information. I can prove she received reports detailing the financial structures. Whether she read them or not is a question for her conscience. Sandra leaned back in her chair. That's weak, Mr. Caldwell. She should have known isn't the same as she knew. Any halfway decent lawyer would tear that apart. Victor felt his confidence faltering. There has to be something, some angle. There might be. Sandra pulled a folder from her bag and laid it on the table. I did some digging of my own, into your wife's background, into the Whitmore family. Victor leaned forward. What did you find? Margaret Whitmore isn't just rich, Mr. Caldwell. She's connected. Her mother's family has been funding politicians for 3 generations, senators, governors, even a presidential campaign or 2. Sandra opened the folder. More importantly, her uncle is Charles Whitmore. The name hit Victor like a punch to the gut. Charles Whitmore, the federal judge, the man who had been appointed to the Southern District of New York 15 years ago, the man who would likely be presiding over any criminal case arising from this mess. You see the problem, Sandra said quietly. Her uncle is a federal judge. Her uncle is the federal judge, the one who handles complex financial crimes in this jurisdiction, the one who would be reviewing any charges filed against Whitmore Sterling Architecture. Victor's mind raced. He would have to recuse himself. Conflict of interest. Would he? The connection isn't obvious. Margaret uses her married name. The family relationship is buried in genealogy records that most people never check. Sandra closed the folder. But I checked. And here's what I think is happening, Mr. Caldwell. I think your wife has been planning this for a very long time. I think she knew years ago that this day might come. And I think she's positioned herself to control every aspect of the outcome. Victor stared at the folder. Then I've already lost. Maybe, maybe not. Sandra leaned forward. There's one thing Margaret can't control. Public opinion. If this story gets enough attention, if it becomes a national scandal, then the usual backroom deals become impossible. Too many eyes watching. Too many questions being asked. So you'll run the story? Sandra hesitated. I'll run a story, but not the one you're hoping for. What do you mean? I mean that exposing offshore tax avoidance schemes isn't exactly front-page news anymore. Everyone does it. Apple, Amazon, every major corporation in America. The public is numb to it. Then what? The human angle. Sandra's eyes gleamed. The betrayed husband who lost everything. The powerful wife who orchestrated his destruction. The affair, the revenge, the family secrets. She smiled. That's a story people will read. That's a story that will go viral. And once it goes viral, the rest of it, the financial crimes, the corruption, all of that will come out in the investigation that follows. Victor understood. She didn't want a financial exposé. She wanted a soap opera. She wanted to turn his humiliation into entertainment. You want me to be the victim. I want you to be honest. About what happened. About what you did. About what was done to you. Sandra shrugged. The public loves a redemption story. The arrogant man brought low. The cheater who got cheated. The schemer who got out-schemed. And if I refuse, then I walk away and you can take your chances with whatever lawyer will still return your calls. Sandra gathered her things. Think about it, Mr. Caldwell. You have until midnight tonight. After that, the offer expires, and I move on to my next story. She stood up. One more thing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. She laid it on the table in front of Victor. It was a picture of Margaret, but not the Margaret he knew, not the quiet housewife in her gardening clothes. This Margaret was standing on a stage at what looked like a charity gala. She was wearing a stunning black dress. She was laughing radiant, more beautiful than Victor had ever seen her. And standing beside her, his arm around her waist, was Daniel Whitmore, Victor's former partner. Victor's former best friend, the man who had confessed to being in love with her. "This photo was taken 3 months ago," Sandra said, "at a benefit for the Metropolitan Museum. According to my sources, your wife and your partner have been very close for the past year. Fundraisers, gallery openings, weekend trips to the Hamptons." She paused. "All while you were sneaking around with your 26-year-old mistress." Victor couldn't take his eyes off the photograph. Margaret was glowing in a way he had never seen, happy in a way he had never made her. "Did they? I don't know if they slept together. That's not really the point, is it?" Sandra picked up her bag. "Midnight, Mr. Caldwell. Think carefully about what you want your legacy to be." She walked out of the restaurant. Victor sat alone at the table staring at the photograph. 3 months ago, while he was in bed with Amber, while he was congratulating himself on his cleverness, Margaret had been building a new life without him, finding happiness without him, maybe even finding love without him. He had thrown her away, and she had landed on her feet. No, she had landed on top of the world. The waiter approached. "Sir, can I get you anything else?" Victor looked up. His eyes were wet. "No, I'm finished here." He stood up, left a few dollars on the table for the water he had ordered, and walked out into the night. The city was alive with light and noise, and people rushing to wherever people rush to on a Wednesday evening. Victor walked without direction. He was trying to think, but his thoughts kept spiraling back to that photograph. Margaret laughing, Daniel holding her, both of them moving on with their lives, while Victor rotted in a motel room eating gas station sandwiches. He found himself standing in front of a bar. A dive bar, the kind of place he would have sneered at a week ago. Tonight, it looked like sanctuary. He went in. He ordered whiskey, then another, then another. By the fifth drink, the bartender was giving him worried looks. "Rough night, buddy." Victor laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. "Rough life. Want to talk about it?" "No." The bartender shrugged and moved on to another customer. Victor pulled out his phone. Sandra's deadline was ticking closer. Midnight. 5 hours away. He could still make the call. He could still tell his story. He could still become the victim, the cautionary tale, the entertainment for millions of people who would read about his failures over their morning coffee. Or he could do something else. He could go nuclear. He opened his email and started typing. Not to Sandra Chen, to someone else. To someone who wouldn't need the human angle. To someone who only cared about facts and figures and evidence. The IRS whistleblower office. To whom it may concern. My name is Victor Caldwell. Until recently, I served as the Chief Financial Officer of Whitmore Sterling Architecture. I am writing to report systematic tax fraud conducted by the company over the past decade, totaling approximately $47 million in unreported offshore income. I have attached documentation supporting these allegations, including account numbers, transaction records, and correspondence between company executives. He paused. His finger hovered over the send button. This would change everything. Once the IRS opened an investigation, there would be no stopping it. Forensic accountants would tear through the company's books. Subpoenas would fly. People would go to prison. Margaret would go to prison. Maybe. Or maybe she would find a way out. Maybe her uncle the judge would pull strings. Maybe her army of lawyers would find loopholes. Maybe once again Margaret Whitmore would land on her feet while Victor Caldwell burned. He was so tired of losing. His phone buzzed. A new email. He opened it without thinking. It was from Margaret. "Victor, I know what you're doing. I know about Sandra Chen. I know about the documents you've been sending. And I know you're sitting in a bar right now drunk, trying to decide whether to send that email to the IRS. Don't." Victor's hands trembled. "Before you do something you can't take back, there's something you need to see. Come to the house tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The front door will be unlocked. Come alone. This is your last chance to understand what's really happening." He read the message 3 times. It had to be a trap. Margaret was trying to lure him back to the house so the police could arrest him, or her lawyers could serve him with more papers, or something worse. But there was something in the tone that gave him pause. Not threatening, not triumphant, almost sad. He put down the phone. He finished his whiskey. He paid his tab and stumbled out into the night. He didn't send the email. Not yet. He would go to the house in the morning. He would hear what Margaret had to say, and then, depending on what he learned, he would decide whether to burn everything down or walk away. Victor Caldwell had been a gambler his whole life. He had bet on himself and won over and over until he started believing he couldn't lose. Now, he was about to place his final bet, and for the first time, he had no idea which way the cards would fall. He woke up on a bench in Central Park. His head was pounding. His mouth tasted like death. His suit was covered in dew and pigeon droppings. He checked his phone. 7:43 a.m. Margaret's invitation. 9 o'clock. He had just over an hour to get to Greenwich. He found a bathroom in the park and did his best to clean himself up. He splashed water on his face. He finger-combed his hair. He tried to brush the stains off his jacket. It didn't help much. He still looked like a homeless person. He still smelled like a distillery. But he was going anyway. He found a taxi and gave the driver the address. The ride cost him almost everything he had left. But he didn't care. Money didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except finding out what Margaret wanted to show him. The taxi pulled into the driveway at 8:57 a.m. The house looked different in the morning light, smaller somehow, less imposing. Just a building, just bricks and windows and a roof. The front door was unlocked just like Margaret had promised. Victor pushed it open. "Hello?" His voice echoed through the foyer. The house was quiet, but not empty. He could feel someone there, watching, waiting. "I'm in the kitchen." Margaret's voice, calm, controlled. Victor walked toward it. She was sitting at the marble island, the same spot where he had found the manila envelope 2 days ago. She was wearing simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, and no makeup. She looked tired. She looked human. She didn't look like the monster he had built her into in his mind. "Sit down, Victor." He sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. Two strangers who had been married for 11 years. "Why am I here, Margaret?" "Because I wanted to give you a choice. A real choice. Not the one you've been making for the past 2 days." "What choice?" Margaret reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. She placed it on the counter between them. "This contains everything. All the evidence my investigators gathered. All the documents. All the photos." She paused. "And something else. Something you haven't seen yet." Victor stared at the drive. "What is it?" "A video. Taken 2 years ago. At the company Christmas party." Victor frowned. "The Christmas party?" "You were drunk. You probably don't remember. But someone recorded you having a conversation with Daniel. A conversation about me." Victor's stomach dropped. "You were laughing," Margaret continued. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "You were telling Daniel how easy I was to control, how pathetic I was, how I believed every lie you told me because I was so desperate to be loved." A tear rolled down her cheek. "You said I was like a trained dog, loyal, obedient, and too stupid to know when I was being mistreated." Victor couldn't breathe. He remembered that conversation, fragments of it anyway. The whiskey, the laughter, the feeling of superiority as he bragged to his friend about how completely he had fooled his wife. "Daniel showed me that video the next day," Margaret said. "He thought I deserved to know who I was really married to." "Margaret, Don't." She held up her hand. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't lie to me one more time." She wiped her eyes. "I didn't bring you here for that." "Then why?" "Because despite everything, I don't want to destroy you, Victor. I never did." Victor stared at her. "You took everything from me." "I took back what was mine." There's a difference. Margaret stood up. I funded that company with my family's money. I supported you through every failure, every setback, every crisis. And in return, you cheated on me. You stole from me. You mocked me to our friends. She walked to the window. I could have crushed you. I could have made sure you spent the next 20 years in prison. But I didn't. The FBI investigation. We'll focus on your actions, not the company's. I've already made sure of that. Margaret turned back to face him. The offshore accounts have been disclosed. The back taxes have been paid. Whitmore Sterling will survive. Your reputation won't. So I'm the scapegoat. You're the one who actually committed the crimes, Victor. That's not scapegoating. That's accountability. Victor wanted to argue. He wanted to rage and scream and tell her she was wrong. But he couldn't. Because she wasn't wrong. He had done everything she said. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. He had done it all, and he had done it to himself. What happens now? His voice was barely a whisper. That's up to you. Margaret picked up the USB drive. On this drive is also a settlement agreement. Sign it, and I'll recommend that the prosecutors pursue minimal charges. Probation. Community service. A chance to rebuild your life. She paused. Refuse, and I'll give them everything. Every email, every transaction, every dirty secret you thought you had hidden. You'll spend the next decade in federal prison, and when you get out, you'll be 65 years old with nothing. Victor looked at the drive, his whole future contained in a piece of plastic smaller than his thumb. Why are you giving me this choice? After everything I did to you? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Because I loved you once. Because I remember the man you used to be before the money and the power corrupted you. Her voice softened. And because revenge isn't what I want anymore. I just want to move on. With Daniel? Margaret didn't answer, but the look in her eyes told him everything. Victor reached for the USB drive. His hand was shaking. If I sign this agreement, what do I get? Your freedom. What's left of it? Margaret walked back to the island and sat down across from him. You'll keep your personal belongings. You'll keep enough money to start over somewhere. And you'll keep your dignity, which is more than you deserve. And if I refuse, if I go to the Times, if I blow everything up, then we both lose. The company, our reputations, our futures. Margaret's eyes hardened. But I'm a Whitmore Victor. My family has survived scandals before. We'll survive this one. She leaned forward. Can you say the same? Victor thought about Sandra Chen and her deadline. He thought about the IRS email he had almost sent. He thought about all the ways he had imagined bringing Margaret down. And he realized finally that he had already lost. He had lost the moment he decided to cheat on her. He had lost the moment he started stealing from the company. He had lost the moment he looked at his quiet, loyal, loving wife and saw nothing but a convenience to be exploited. Margaret hadn't destroyed him. He had destroyed himself. She had just been smart enough to get out of the way. Victor picked up the USB drive. I'll sign the agreement. Margaret nodded. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just looked tired. Good. My lawyers will be in touch. She stood up and walked toward the door. Margaret. She stopped but didn't turn around. I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am. Margaret was silent for a long moment. Goodbye, Victor. She walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, out of his life. Victor sat alone at the marble island holding the USB drive that contained his surrender. Outside, he heard a car start. Tires on gravel. The sound of Margaret driving away. He looked around the kitchen, the copper pots, the granite counters, the breakfast nook where they used to sit together on Sunday mornings reading the paper, drinking coffee, pretending to be happy. It had all been a lie. His whole life, a carefully constructed lie. And now the lie was over. Victor Caldwell put his head down on the cold marble and wept. Victor signed the settlement agreement 3 days later. He sat in a conference room at Reynolds Stone surrounded by lawyers who looked at him like he was something they had scraped off their shoes. Margaret wasn't there. She had sent her legal team to handle the details. Victor supposed he should be grateful. Seeing her again might have broken whatever was left of him. The document was 47 pages long. He didn't read it. What was the point? He had already lost everything. The specifics didn't matter. His signature looked shaky on the page. The signature of a broken man. Mr. Caldwell. Arthur Reynolds, Margaret's lead attorney, gathered the papers with crisp efficiency. You understand that by signing this agreement, you waive all claims to marital property, corporate assets, and any future earnings from Whitmore Sterling Architecture. I understand. You also agree to cooperate fully with federal investigators regarding your activities as CFO. In exchange, Mrs. Whitmore has agreed to recommend leniency in your sentencing. I understand. Do you have any questions? Victor looked up at the lawyer. Arthur Reynolds was everything Victor used to be. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the confident posture of a man who had never lost anything in his life. Just one. Is she happy? Reynolds blinked. Whatever question he had expected, it wasn't that. Excuse me. Margaret, is she happy now that I'm gone? Reynolds gathered his papers and stood up. That's not relevant to these proceedings, Mr. Caldwell. It's relevant to me. The lawyer paused at the door. For a moment, something almost human flickered across his face. She's doing well. The company is thriving. She's focused on the future. He opened the door. I suggest you do the same. He walked out. Victor sat alone in the conference room for a long time. The future. What future? He was 53 years old with a federal indictment hanging over his head. No money, no job, no friends, and no family. The future was a dark hole he was falling into with no bottom in sight. His public defender, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Huang, came to collect him. Ready for the arraignment. Victor stood up. Does it matter if I'm ready? Not really, but it helps to pretend. The federal courthouse was 3 blocks away. Victor walked with Patricia through the crowded Manhattan streets, anonymous in his rumpled suit and his defeated posture. No one recognized him. No one cared. 2 weeks ago, he had been Victor Caldwell's CFO power player, master of the universe. Now he was just another defendant, shuffling toward judgment. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag hanging limply in the corner. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her nameplate read, Arbo Catherine Webb, not Charles Whitmore. Margaret's uncle had recused himself just as Victor had predicted. Small mercy. The prosecutor, a young man with an ambitious gleam in his eye, read the charges. Victor Thomas Caldwell, you are charged with wire fraud in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1343. You are further charged with embezzlement in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 666. You are further charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 371. How do you plead? Victor looked at Patricia. She nodded. Guilty. The word fell from his mouth like a stone. Guilty. Guilty. 3 times. 3 admissions. 3 nails in the coffin of the life he used to have. Judge Webb made some notes. The court accepts the defendant's plea. Sentencing will be scheduled for 30 days from today. She looked at Victor over her reading glasses. Mr. Caldwell, do you have anything to say? Victor thought about all the things he could say. Excuses, explanations, justifications. None of them would matter. No, Your Honor. Very well. The defendant is remanded to federal custody pending sentencing. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. 2 marshals approached Victor. They were polite but firm. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The metal was cold against his skin. He was led out of the courtroom through a side door, down a hallway, into an elevator, down to a basement where a van was waiting. The van took him to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. a federal holding facility for defendants awaiting trial or sentencing. Victor had driven past this building 100 times. He had never imagined he would see it from the inside. The intake process was dehumanizing. He was stripped, searched, photographed, fingerprinted, given an orange jumpsuit and a pair of plastic sandals. His wedding ring was taken along with his watch and his wallet, the last remnants of his old life sealed in a plastic bag with his name written on it in black marker. He was assigned to a cell on the 4th floor, 8 feet by 10 feet. A metal bunk, a stainless steel toilet, a small window that looked out at nothing. His cellmate was a man named Jerome, mid-40s, serving time for bank fraud. First time inside. Victor nodded. It gets easier, or you get used to it. Same thing, I guess. Jerome was lying on the top bunk, reading a paperback novel. What are you in for? Embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy. Jerome whistled. White collar. That's good. Means you'll probably end up at one of the nicer facilities. Danbury, Otisville, country club compared to this place. How long have you been here? 14 months, still waiting on my appeal. Jerome turned a page. Word of advice. Don't think too much about the outside. Don't think about your family. Don't think about what you lost. It'll drive you crazy. Victor climbed onto the bottom bunk and stared at the springs above him. Don't think about what you lost. Too late for that. The days blurred together. Wake up at 6, breakfast at 7, recreation at 9, lunch at noon, more recreation, dinner at 5, lights out at 10. Victor moved through the routine like a ghost. He didn't talk to the other inmates. He didn't watch TV in the common room. He didn't read or exercise or do anything except exist. He was waiting. Waiting for sentencing. Waiting for judgment. Waiting for the next phase of his punishment to begin. 3 weeks into his detention, he got a visitor. The guard led him to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. A thick glass window separated the visiting area from the rest of the facility. Victor sat down. On the other side of the glass was Daniel Whitmore, Victor's former partner, his former best friend, the man who had taken his wife. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel looked good, healthy, happy. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than Victor's entire wardrobe used to cost. His hair was perfectly styled. His skin had the glow of someone who slept well and ate well and didn't have a care in the world. Victor hated him with every fiber of his being. What do you want, Daniel? I wanted to see you, to see how you were holding up. You came to gloat. No, Daniel shook his head. I came to understand. Understand what? How you could do it. How you could have everything and throw it all away for a 26-year-old with fake breasts and a real estate license. Victor laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. Is that what this is about? You want to know why I cheated on Margaret? I want to know why you didn't love her. Why you couldn't see what you had. Daniel leaned forward. She's the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Smart, kind, loyal, beautiful. And you treated her like garbage. So you could pick up the pieces. I didn't plan this, Victor. I didn't scheme to steal your wife. I was there. When she needed someone. When she found out about Amber. When she decided to fight back instead of giving up. Daniel's voice softened. She cried for 3 days. Did you know that 3 days of crying before she made her first call to the lawyers? Because despite everything, she still loved you. She still wanted to believe you would change. Victor felt something twist in his chest. Guilt. Regret. The faint echo of a conscience he had buried long ago. I didn't come here to make you feel bad, Daniel continued. You're doing that fine on your own. I came because Margaret asked me to. Margaret sent you? She wanted you to have this. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. He pressed it against the glass. It was a picture of Victor. But not Victor as he was now. Victor as he used to be. Young, hopeful, smiling. His wedding day. He was standing at the altar looking at someone off camera with an expression of pure joy, pure love, looking at Margaret. "She found this when she was packing up the house," Daniel said. "She thought you might want to remember who you used to be, before the money, before the power, before you became the man who destroyed everything." Victor stared at the photograph. His throat was tight. His eyes were burning. "Why would she do that after everything I did to her?" "Because she's Margaret." Daniel put the photograph down. "Because she believes people can change. Because she hopes that somewhere inside the man you've become, there's still a piece of the man she married." "There isn't." "Then prove me wrong." Daniel stood up. "You're going to prison, Victor, probably for years. You can spend that time feeling sorry for yourself, blaming Margaret, blaming me, blaming everyone except the person who's actually responsible." He picked up the photograph. "Or you can use it to figure out where you went wrong, to become someone worth being." "Easy for you to say. You have everything." "I have what you threw away. There's a difference." Daniel slipped the photograph through the small gap at the bottom of the glass. It slid across the table to Victor. "Goodbye, Victor. I doubt we'll see each other again." He turned and walked toward the door. "Daniel." He stopped. "Take care of her. Margaret. Take care of her better than I did." Daniel didn't turn around. "I intend to." He walked out. Victor sat alone in the visiting room holding the photograph of a man he no longer recognized. Sentencing day arrived on a gray Tuesday in November. Victor was transported back to the federal courthouse in a van with 6 other inmates. He was still wearing the orange jumpsuit. He was still wearing the plastic sandals. He had lost 15 pounds and gained dark circles under his eyes. The courtroom was fuller this time. Reporters in the back rows. Curious onlookers who had read about the case in the papers. A sketch artist capturing his humiliation in charcoal and colored pencil. Margaret was there. She was sitting in the front row behind the prosecutor's table. She was wearing a simple black dress. No jewelry, no makeup. She looked like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Judge Webb took her seat. The courtroom fell silent. "We are here for the sentencing of Victor Thomas Caldwell on 3 counts of federal fraud. Before I deliver my sentence, does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Victor looked at Patricia. She nodded encouragingly. He stood up. His legs were shaking. His voice was hoarse. "Your Honor, I prepared a statement, but I'm not going to read it." Murmurs in the courtroom. Patricia looked alarmed. "Instead, I want to say something true. Something I should have said a long time ago." He turned to face Margaret. "I was a terrible husband. I was selfish and cruel and unfaithful. I took everything you gave me and never once said thank you. I lied to you every day for years, and when you found out, I blamed you. I told myself you were weak. I told myself you deserved it." Margaret's face was unreadable. Her hands were folded in her lap. "You weren't weak. You were strong. Stronger than I ever knew. And when you finally decided to stop carrying me, I crashed. Because I was never the success I thought I was. I was just a man standing on the shoulders of a woman who loved him too much." His voice broke. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I see it now. All of it. Every lie I told. Every promise I broke. Every piece of your heart I stepped on." He turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I'm guilty. Not just of the charges against me. I'm guilty of being a coward, a fraud, a man who had everything and was too blind to appreciate it." He swallowed. "Whatever sentence you give me, I'll accept it, because it's less than I deserve." He sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Webb studied him for a long moment. Then she looked down at her papers. "Mr. Caldwell, in my 23 years on the bench, I have heard many statements from defendants. Most of them are self-serving. Most of them are designed to elicit sympathy." She paused. "Yours was neither. And while it doesn't excuse your crimes, it suggests that perhaps there is hope for rehabilitation. She picked up a document. The prosecution has recommended a sentence of 7 to 10 years. The defense has requested leniency based on the defendant's cooperation and lack of prior criminal history. I have also received a letter from Mrs. Whitmore requesting that the court consider mercy. Victor's head snapped up. He looked at Margaret. She was staring straight ahead, her expression unchanged. She had asked for mercy. After everything he had done, she had asked for mercy. Taking all factors into consideration, I hereby sentence Victor Thomas Caldwell to 5 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 3 years. 5 years. It could have been worse. It should have been worse. The defendant will be remanded to the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut to serve his sentence. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Marshals approached to take Victor into custody. He stood up, still dazed by the sentence, by Margaret's letter, by everything. As they led him toward the door, he passed by Margaret's row. She looked up at him. Their eyes met. For a moment, just a moment, Victor saw something in her face. Not love, not hatred. Something in between. Something like pity. Something like grief. Then she looked away. Victor was led out of the courtroom, out of the building, into a van that would take him to prison. The ride to Danbury took 2 hours. Victor spent it staring out the window at the Connecticut countryside. The trees were bare. The sky was gray. The world looked exactly as dead as he felt inside. The prison was smaller than he expected. Low buildings surrounded by chain-link fences and razor wire. Not the country club Jerome had described, but not a maximum security hellhole either. Intake was faster this time. He had been through the process before. Strip, search, photograph, fingerprint, new jumpsuit, new plastic sandals, new number. Inmate 77291. His cell was on the 2nd floor. Single occupancy this time. A small mercy. He was given a schedule. Wake up at 5:30. Work assignment at 7 Hazaru. Lunch at noon. Recreation at 3 Hazaru. Dinner at 5:30. Lights out at 9 Hazaru. His work assignment was the prison library. Victor laughed when he heard that. The library. Margaret's father had been a librarian. The job Victor had mocked. The profession he had sneered at. Now it was his life. His first day in the library, he was assigned to reshelve returned books. Mindless work. Stack the cart. Push it down the aisles. Put each book in its proper place. He moved through the stacks like a zombie. Fiction, non-fiction, biography, self-help. He stopped at the self-help section. A title caught his eye. The Road Back: Finding Redemption After Failure. He pulled it off the shelf. The cover was worn. The pages were dog-eared. Dozens of inmates had read this book before him. He opened it to a random page. The first step toward redemption is accepting responsibility. Not just for what you did, but for who you became. The circumstances that shaped you don't excuse you. They explain you. And explanations are not the same as absolution. Victor closed the book. He wasn't ready for redemption. Not yet. But maybe in 5 years he would be. He slipped the book into his pocket and continued pushing the cart. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the prison yard. Another day was ending. Victor Caldwell had 3 years minimum before parole. 1095 days to figure out who he was going to become. He had wasted the first 53 years of his life. Maybe it wasn't too late to make the next 53 count for something. Maybe. Or maybe this was all there was. Gray walls, gray days. The slow march of time in a place where time had no meaning. He pushed the cart to the end of the aisle and started on the next row. One book at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. It was all he could do. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days. That was how long Victor Caldwell spent inside the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. 1,170 days of gray walls, fluorescent lights, and the slow grinding passage of time. He had entered prison as a broken man, bitter, angry, convinced that the world had treated him unfairly. He was leaving as something else. The morning of his release, Victor woke up at 5:30, the same time he had woken up every day for 3 years. His body didn't know any other rhythm anymore. The cell was dark. The hallway was quiet. In 6 hours, he would walk through the front gates and never come back. He lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He had thought about this day constantly during his first year, fantasized about it, counted down the days like a child counting down to Christmas. Freedom had seemed like the answer to everything. Once he was out, he would rebuild. He would recover. He would become Victor Caldwell again. Now, on the morning it was finally happening, he felt nothing. Not excitement, not relief, not hope. Just a quiet emptiness, like a room that had been cleared of furniture. He got up. He made his bed with military precision the way he had learned to make it. He brushed his teeth. He shaved. He put on the civilian clothes that had been waiting for him in a plastic bag since his intake. Khaki pants, a blue button-down shirt, brown loafers. The clothes hung loose on his frame. He had lost 30 pounds in prison. The food was bad, and he had lost his appetite for most things, including life. At 11 a.m., a guard came to collect him. "Caldwell, time to go." Victor picked up the small cardboard box that contained his possessions. A few books, some letters, the photograph Daniel had given him 3 years ago, worn soft from handling. He walked down the hallway for the last time. Past the cells of men who were still counting their days. Past the common room where he had spent countless hours staring at a television he wasn't watching. Past the library where he had shelved thousands of books and read hundreds more. The other inmates didn't say goodbye. That wasn't how it worked in here. You left, and the men who stayed behind pretended you had never existed. It was easier that way. The guard led him through a series of locked doors. Each one clanged shut behind him with a finality that used to make him flinch. Now he barely noticed. The final door opened onto a small processing room. A bored clerk handed him an envelope containing $247.38, the balance of his prison account. Everything he had earned in 3 years of shelving books at 17 cents an hour. "Sign here." Victor signed. "Any questions?" "No." "Then you're free to go. Door's that way." Victor walked toward the door. His hand touched the handle. Cold metal. Just like everything else in this place. He pushed it open. Sunlight hit him like a physical force. He stood on the steps of the prison, blinking in the brightness. The air smelled different out here. Cleaner. Realer. The sky was blue and endless in a way he had forgotten skies could be. He took a deep breath. Free. He was free. The word felt strange in his mind. Foreign. Like a language he used to speak but had forgotten. A car was waiting in the parking lot. A silver Honda Civic, unremarkable and anonymous. A woman was leaning against it, arms crossed. Patricia Huang, his former public defender. Victor walked toward her. His legs felt unsteady on the uneven ground. Prison floors were always flat, always predictable. The outside world had texture he wasn't used to anymore. "You came," he said. "I said I would." Patricia opened the passenger door. "Get in. I'll drive you to the halfway house." Victor hesitated. "Why are you doing this?" "Your job ended 3 years ago." Patricia shrugged. "Maybe I wanted to see how the story ended." She walked around to the driver's side. "Or maybe I just had a free morning. Don't overthink it." Victor got in the car. They drove in silence for a while. The Connecticut countryside rolled past green and alive. Victor watched it like a man watching a foreign film. Beautiful, but not quite real. "So," Patricia said finally, "what's the plan? Plan? For your life, your future. What are you going to do now?" Victor thought about it. For 3 years, his future had been defined by walls and schedules and the distant promise of this day. Now that it was here, he had no idea what came next. I don't know. That's honest. Patricia glanced at him. Most guys coming out of prison have a whole speech prepared. Big dreams, grand plans, usually bullshit. I'm too old for bullshit. You're 56. That's not old. It feels old. Patricia pulled into the parking lot of a worn-looking building. 3 stories. Brick facade. A sign out front that read, New Horizons Transitional Housing. This is you, she said. Room and board for 6 months paid for by the state. After that, you're on your own. Victor looked at the building. It was a far cry from the Greenwich Mansion, a far cry from the corner office, a far cry from everything he used to have. But it was a start. Patricia. Yeah, thank you for everything. She nodded. Don't make me regret it. Stay out of trouble. Get a job. Build something real this time. She paused. And Victor, whatever you do, don't contact Margaret. She's moved on. Let her stay moved on. Victor got out of the car. He stood on the sidewalk holding his cardboard box, watching Patricia drive away. Then he turned and walked into his new life. The halfway house was everything Victor had expected, and nothing he had hoped for. His room was 8 feet by 8 feet, a single bed, a small desk, a window that looked out onto an alley. The walls were thin enough that he could hear his neighbor snoring at night. But it was his. For now at least, it was his. He spent his first week getting oriented, meeting with his parole officer, filling out job applications, learning the bus routes and the locations of the employment offices and the food banks. He was 56 years old with a federal conviction on his record and a 3-year gap in his employment history. No one was rushing to hire him. He applied for 47 jobs in his first month. He got 2 interviews. Neither one led to an offer. I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, but we're looking for someone with more recent experience. I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, but your background check raised some concerns. I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. By the end of his second month, Victor was running out of money and running out of hope. He was sitting on a bench in a park near the halfway house watching pigeons fight over breadcrumbs when a man sat down beside him. Victor didn't look up. He had learned in prison to mind his own business. Beautiful day, the man said. Victor grunted. I said it's a beautiful day. Victor turned to look at him. The man was about his age, maybe a little older. Gray hair, kind eyes. He was wearing work clothes, paint-splattered jeans, and a flannel shirt. Do I know you? No, but I know you. The man extended his hand. Bill Henderson. I run a construction company. Small outfit, mostly residential. Victor shook his hand warily. How do you know me? I read about your case in the papers a few years back. Big shot CFO brought down by his own wife. Made quite a splash. Bill smiled. I've also been watching you apply for jobs all over town. Word gets around. And you came to offer me one. Maybe. Depends on whether you're interested. Victor laughed bitterly. I'm a convicted felon with no construction experience. Why would you want to hire me? Because I was you once. Different crime, same story. 20 years ago, I was a real estate developer who got caught cutting corners. Did 3 years at Otisville. Bill shrugged. When I got out, nobody would touch me. So I started my own company. Built it from nothing. Now I make a point of hiring guys like us, guys who need a second chance. Victor stared at him. Why? Because someone did it for me, and because I believe people can change if they want to badly enough. Bill stood up. I'm not offering you a corner office, Victor. I'm offering you a chance to swing a hammer and earn an honest wage. The pay is decent, the work is hard, and if you stick with it, maybe you can build something real. Victor thought about his options, which were none. When do I start? Tomorrow. 6 a.m. Don't be late. Bill wrote an address on a scrap of paper and handed it to Victor. One more thing. I don't care what you did before. I don't care how much money you used to have or how important you used to be. On my crew, you're just another guy with a hammer. You work hard, you get paid. You slack off, you're gone. Understood? Understood. Bill nodded and walked away. Victor sat on the bench holding the piece of paper, a construction job, manual labor, the kind of work he would have sneered at 5 years ago. Now it felt like a lifeline. He showed up the next morning at 5:45 a.m. The work was brutal, carrying lumber, mixing concrete, climbing ladders. By the end of his first day, every muscle in his body was screaming. But he showed up the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. Victor learned how to frame a wall, how to hang drywall, how to install windows and doors and electrical outlets. His hands, once soft from decades of pushing papers, became calloused and strong. He moved out of the halfway house and into a small apartment. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But it was his, paid for with money he had earned with his own hands. For the first time in his life, Victor Caldwell was building something real. 2 years after his release, Victor got a promotion. Bill made him a site foreman. It wasn't a corner office, but it was responsibility. It was trust. It was proof that he had become someone worth believing in. "You've earned this," Bill told him. "Don't let me down." "I won't." And he didn't. Victor threw himself into the job. He arrived early. He stayed late. He mentored the younger workers, especially the ones who had come out of prison like him. He showed them that a conviction didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of a different one. He started attending meetings at a local church. Not religious services, but support groups. Men who had made mistakes. Men who were trying to do better. They sat in a circle and talked about their failures and their hopes, and the long, difficult road toward becoming the people they wanted to be. Victor didn't talk much at first. He just listened. But eventually he started sharing. His story, his mistakes, the wife he had betrayed, the life he had destroyed. "I used to think I was the smartest guy in every room," he told the group one night. "Turns out I was the dumbest. I had everything, and I threw it away because I was too arrogant to see what I had." An older man across the circle nodded. "That's the thing about rock bottom. It strips away all the lies you tell yourself. All that's left is the truth." "The truth is hard to live with," Victor said. "It is, but it's better than the alternative." 3 years after his release, Victor got a letter. It arrived at his apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. No return address. Just his name, handwritten in elegant cursive. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Margaret. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photograph showed a building, a community center newly constructed with a sign out front that read, "The Caldwell Center for Second Chances." Victor stared at it. He read the letter. "Victor, I heard about what you've been doing since your release. The job, the mentoring, the way you've rebuilt yourself. I'm proud of you. I didn't think I would ever say that, but I am. The building in the photo is a project I've been working on for the past 2 years. A place where people with criminal records can get job training, counseling, and support. I named it after you. Not the man you were, but the man you're becoming. I still don't forgive you for what you did. Maybe I never will. But I believe in redemption. I believe people can change. And I wanted you to know that your story isn't just about failure. It's about what comes after. Be well. Margaret." Victor read the letter 3 times. Then he sat down on his bed and cried. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of self-pity. Tears of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 5 years after his release, Victor Caldwell stood in front of the Caldwell Center for Second Chances. He was 61 years old. His hair was gray. His face was weathered. His hands were rough from years of honest work. He looked nothing like the man he used to be. He was there for the center's anniversary celebration. Margaret had invited him. Not to reconcile, not to rekindle anything, just to see what they had built in their own ways from the wreckage of their marriage. The center was full of people, former inmates learning new trades, social workers offering counseling, volunteers serving food and hope in equal measure. Victor walked through the crowd anonymous and unremarkable. Just another face. Just another story. He found Margaret near the back of the room talking with a group of donors. She was 60 now, her hair streaked with silver, but she was still beautiful. Still radiant. Still the woman he had been too blind to appreciate. Daniel was beside her. They were married now. Victor had read about it in the papers 2 years ago. Margaret saw him approaching. She excused herself from the group and walked toward him. They stood facing each other. Two people who had once shared a life, who had destroyed each other, who had somehow against all odds found their way back to something like peace. "You came," she said. "You invited me. I wasn't sure you would." Neither was I. They stood in silence for a moment. The noise of the celebration swirled around them. "The center is beautiful," Victor said. "You did something amazing here. We did something, in different ways." Margaret tilted her head. "You look good, Victor. Healthy, peaceful." "I feel peaceful. For the first time in my life." He paused. "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For the letter, for naming this place after me, for believing I could change even when I didn't believe it myself." "Oh." Margaret's eyes glistened. "I meant what I said in the letter. I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. But I don't hate you anymore. And that feels like enough. It's more than I deserve." "Maybe." She almost smiled. "But I've learned that giving people more than they deserve is sometimes exactly what they need." Victor looked around the room, at the men and women getting second chances, at the lives being rebuilt. "I wasted so many years," he said quietly, "chasing things that didn't matter, hurting people who did. If I could go back—" "You can't." Margaret cut him off gently. "None of us can. The only direction is forward." "I know. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I lost everything, but because I hurt you. And you didn't deserve it." Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his hand. Just for a second. Just long enough to acknowledge everything that had passed between them. "Goodbye, Victor." "Goodbye, Margaret." She walked away. Back to Daniel. Back to her life. Back to the future she had built without him. Victor watched her go. He didn't feel sadness. He didn't feel regret. He felt gratitude. For the lesson she had taught him. For the man she had forced him to become. For the second chance he had never earned but had finally learned to use. He walked out of the center and into the evening air. The sun was setting over the city. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. The world was beautiful in a way he had never noticed before. Victor Caldwell had lost everything. His money, his career, his reputation, his wife, his freedom. And in losing everything he had, finally found the one thing that mattered: himself. He walked down the street a 61-year-old man with nothing but the clothes on his back and the peace in his heart. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. For the first time in his life, that felt like freedom. Victor Caldwell had spent 53 years building a life that meant nothing. He had spent the next 8 years building a life that meant everything. And as he walked into the sunset, he understood the truth that had eluded him for so long. The measure of a man is not what he takes from the world, it is what he leaves behind.